Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We know more are coming as they are able. We're so glad you were able to spend your afternoon with us today. My name is Anne Jameson, and I'm with the Institute for Catholic Education here in Ontario. I'm pleased to welcome you all to the first part of our two-part webinar series in conversation with Dr. Ann Walsh. Today's webinar focuses on the topic of the role of conversion in adult faith formation in Catholic education. This webinar series is based on the insights we gained from the provincial symposium held last May 2023 for Catholic education partners in Ontario. You can find the document that resulted from that symposium on the way, principles, patterns, and processes in adult faith formation in Catholic education on the ICE website. We are recording today's session, and it will be posted as both a video and podcast option for this webinar once the series is done. And now I'd like to welcome our special guests. I'll ask them to show themselves to us. We're so pleased today to be joined by our special guest, Dr. Ann Walsh, who will be leading this conversation. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you.
Ann was one of our keynote speakers at our recent symposium on the way and is a recognized leader across Canada in adult faith formation. She's worked with bishops across the country and led retreats and conferences internationally. She was a Catholic educator for many years in her home province of Newfoundland. We are delighted to welcome you here today, Ann. Joining Ann in conversation today is Superintendent Lorrie Naar and Principal Norm Roberts, both from the Halton Catholic District School Board, and a warm welcome to you both. Thank you for joining in this important conversation. And we are grateful to Stephen Hurley, who is joining us to assist us with our podcast today, and to Cassandra Jack Caldera, who will be assisting with our conversation in our next session. As we begin, let us pause momentarily to acknowledge the land. We begin our session today in recognition that we gather on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. The land where we work at the Institute is the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas, land covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. As educators and persons of faith, we recognize the need for commitment to ongoing reflection, learning, and action on the path to reconciliation. May it be so. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to send it off to Ann Walsh now, who's going to lead us in prayer and begin our conversation.
Thank you, Anne. And it is really an honor and a privilege to be here today to spend this time in conversation about a topic that's not much discussed, but very vital to us. And so we begin with a prayer to the Holy Spirit by a saint dear to my heart. I'm a Redemptorist lay missionary, so we'll pray one of the prayers written by St. Alphonsus Liguori. We begin as we begin all prayer, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You are fire. Enkindle in me your love. You are light. Enlighten my mind with the knowledge of eternal things. You are the dove. Give me innocence of life. You are the gentle breeze. Disperse the storms of my passions. You are the tongue. Teach me how to bless you always. You are the cloud. Shelter me under the shadow of your protection. You're the giver of all heavenly gifts. Animate me. With your grace, sanctify me. With your charity, enlighten me. With your wisdom, adopt me by your goodness as your child, and save me in your infinite mercy, so that I may ever bless you, praise you, and love you, first during this life on earth, and then in heaven for all eternity. So a prayer that I've come to love. We begin many of our gatherings of Redemptorist lay partners in mission with that prayer. So just a very dear one. So today, I'm going to ask you to ponder something that maybe has not been uppermost in your mind as a person, as a Catholic educator, as a faith-filled person. When you hear the word conversion, what comes to mind for you? For many of us, I think it would be that more evangelical connotation of the word, that conversion is something sudden, something dramatic. And if I were asked many years ago to say, well, what does conversion look like in your life? I wouldn't have had an answer. I wouldn't have a dramatic moment, and I still don't have a dramatic moment. The catechist in me always goes to baptism. And I'll say, well, my conversion began with my baptism, when I was brought into the family of the people of God, when I was claimed as a child of God, when the white garment was put on me and the candle was lit for me by my godparents. But I wouldn't have had a dramatic moment, and I still do not. For me, the best image that I have come to hold dear of conversion is the image of a sunflower. Now, I'll tell you the story of why that's so. It's a gift from an Irish poet. I'm not sure how many sunflowers there are in Ireland. I associate them more with Ukraine, but there's a poet named Thomas Moore who wrote some beautiful poems back in the middle of the 19th century. And I was taught by the Sisters of Mercy, and they had a real relationship with Thomas Moore. He wrote a song about his wife. It's called Believe Me If All Those Endearing Young Charms. Sounds very Victorian, but the story is quite beautiful. She was a beautiful woman, but her face became disfigured by some sort of illness and became pockmarked and worn. And she felt very self-conscious and even wondered whether her husband could love her after her beauty had been taken away by the illness. He was heartbroken to think that she could even think such a thing. And to express how he felt, he wrote this song. Believe me, if all those endearing young charms that I gaze on so fondly today were to fade by tomorrow and flee in my arms like fairy gifts fading away. And then the last verse goes, no, the heart that has truly loved never forgets, and as truly loves on to the close. As the sunflower turns on her God when she sets, the same look that she turned when he rose. So the image of the sunflower I draw from that poem. And what we know about sunflowers is gradually unfolding. We're learning more and more. But sunflowers turn their heads toward the sun at every hour of the day, of the sunlit day. And so for me, that's a great image of my life. That what I'm called to do throughout my life is to turn my head, my whole being, toward God, more and more toward God. And so the question I ask myself is, what if I'm a sunflower in that sense? I'm constantly throughout my life, not in one big dramatic moment or even a series of dramatic moments, but through the regular, ordinary events of life, being turned and turning towards the sun, so that the sun is not the sun, but the son. So I've said that it's not dramatic moments, but there's drama in the moments of ordinary life. How was I converted to Jesus Christ after my baptism, after he entered my heart, after my family began to inculcate in me that love of God? Well, I can think of some moments, but I don't think of them as particularly dramatic. But they're the precious moments, those key moments of everyday life where God enters in and I respond. And as I respond, using that yes that was said for me at baptism, I more and more gain the ability to say further yeses. So I can picture the 13-year-old Anne, not very self confident. In fact, quite nervous and not very sure at all that I had any abilities. But my mother and her friends had just formed a Catholic Women's League in our parish, and one of the ministries they took on was catechesis in a local children's rehabilitation center. And so I was voluntold to be part of that ministry. So imagine a 13-year-old being drafted into a catechetical ministry. I was frightened to death. But when I got there with those other children, not much younger than myself, and began to talk with them about the activities that mom and her friends had planned, I discovered something unexpected. I discovered that I loved teaching. I didn't think I was very good at it, but I discovered a calling. It was still tenuous. I wouldn't have said I had much confidence, but there was a glimmer that there may be a message, a call from God in this call that really came from my mother and her friends. And I was hooked. I went every Sunday faithfully for years to this children's rehab center and grew to love those kids and grew to love the ministry of catechesis. And then one day, while I was sitting with my friends on the lawn of my friend's house, one of the dads, who was the director of Catholic education for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, came and said, "Anne, what are you going to be when you grow up?" And the 15-year-old me wasn't very sure and said, "I don't know. Maybe I don't know." And he said, "Have you ever thought about being a teacher?" I said, "Why would you say that?" And he sat down on the lawn next to me and said, "Anne, I think that you would make a great teacher. You love to explain things to people. You love the pursuit of knowledge. You love the adventure of learning. Whenever there's a group of kids, you're the teacher. When I see you with your brothers and sisters, and there were 7 of them, sometimes you're out on the back deck and you're teaching them. I've seen you teach all kinds of things. I think you're good at it. Why don't you consider it?" And in that, he continued that turning toward the God who loved me and had something in mind for me. So throughout my life, there were small moments that ended up to a very big turning. But the initial yes, the initial invitation certainly came through baptism and my immersion into my family, which was a family of faith, not without its struggles, but certainly a family of faith, and also in my parish, in which I found a really supportive community. One of the stories of conversion that I've gone through came much later in my life. In my 40s, I found myself in hospital in Regina, Saskatchewan. I was teaching a youth ministry course, and my gallbladder attacked me. Anybody who's had a gallbladder attack, it's never as benign as that sounds. My gallbladder attacked me, and I found myself needing surgery. So I was taken to the hospital by ambulance, and they found all these gallstones and had to get a pretty severe infection under control until they before they could do surgery. So I was paralyzed. This woman who really had been on a journey of faith all my life, who was a professional minister in the church, in the school system, in my parish, in my diocese, and with the Redemptorists, I suddenly couldn't pray. As I sat there in that emergency room, went through those tests, was admitted, went to the ward, I was terrified and paralyzed, and I could not pray. For the first time in my life, no words would come. So I phoned a friend of mine who's a Redemptorist, and he didn't take me very seriously at all. He said, "Oh, Anne, that's why you were baptized." And he laughed at me. He said, "Don't you realize that? This is why you were baptized, so that in a time like this, when you can't pray, the rest of us pray for you. And again, it was a moment of that turning, of turning more and more toward the Son and realizing it's true. All my life, I had been trying to follow my baptismal call as best as I was able and respond with joy and fidelity to the movements of that call wherever it took me. But I had not grasped the importance of the community that I was part of, and that community wasn't just there for me to serve. They were there to serve me and support me in my moments of trial. And so it really opened up a new understanding. And what I was able to pray that night was that, very clearly have a memory of this, that I'd be no nurse's worst patient, and that each day God would show me somehow that God was present. So later that night, as I was curled up in my bed with the IV pole next to me, a nurse came in and she said, "You work for the church, don't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And she said, "You have a roommate." Self-absorbed me had not even seen the roommate. There was a kind of a curtain drawn across half of the room, so I didn't realize I had a roommate. So the nurse, her name was Jenny, and Jenny said, "Tonight when the lights go out, she'll start to cry. We can't get her to talk. Will you go over and talk to her?" And so she just left. She didn't wait for my answer. She left. She assumed the answer was yes. And I was there with my IV pole saying, "Look, sick person here. Like, this is not the way this is supposed to be." I forgot what I had prayed. I forgot that I had prayed that God would show me each day that God was present. And so when the lights went down, I did take my IV pole and walk very slowly across the room to this woman who was crying behind the curtain. I asked her what was wrong, and she said, "Why would you care?" I said, "I do. Tell me what's going on." And I said, "The nurses are very upset." And she said, "Well, I had a double mastectomy, and tomorrow I'm going to a rehab facility." I said, that is pretty rough. That's a lot to take in." And she said, "Well, that's not why I'm crying." I said, "Well, what is it?" She said, "I was from another town, and my kids wanted me to be near them. So they moved me, with my agreement, they moved me to this place. But I have no friends here. And they had every good intention. I know they love me, but they have their friends, and I have none here. And I'm very lonely." So I said, now this, I'm kind of condensing the conversation. So she said, I don't know what to say to my kids. I said, "Well, why don't we pray that tomorrow, when you get to that facility, you'll talk to a chaplain." She said, "What is a chaplain?" And I told her what a chaplain was. I said, "A chaplain can help you talk to your kids about the way forward." And she said, "You really think a chaplain could do that?" I said, "Yeah, that's what chaplains do. They help us to sort out our thoughts and find a way forward with God's help." And so that night, I went back to my bed and she didn't cry. And the next morning, when her son came with the ambulance driver to take her to the new facility, she made the ambulance driver wait outside the room and she told her son the whole story. And I heard him say, "Mom, had we only known, this would not have happened. We will find a better way. We'll find a way for you to be where you need to be." And I just sat there in the bed and went, "Okay, I do know you're there." Every day that week while I was waiting for surgery, there was something, not always that dramatic, but something, a glimpse of the presence of God. And that's what our conversion journey, for at least I think so, is like that. It's seldom in the dramatic moments, though there are those, but it's in the ordinary moments of everyday life, in the call from friends, in the words of our parents, in the relationships we have with our loved ones, the relationships we have with those we don't love as we should, in sickness, in health, in joy and sorrow. It's a gradual turning more and more to the Son, but the SON. So We're going to have a little conversation now with Lori and Norm. And they don't have to answer these questions, but the things I'm thinking of is what is it really like if we are the sunflowers and we follow or turn more and more toward the sun, the SON? What's that like? What does that image do in you? And what's that like in your life?
I can start if you want.
Sure.
So I think when I think about the sunflowers and I think about, the sun is always there. God is always there for us, and that invitation is always there. And when I think about those, whether they're simple moments or sacred moments in everyday life, um, when we can respond to that, knowing that God is there and loving us, we we're aware of that intersection between what we think we want for ourselves and knowing ourselves. And when it syncs with what God's call for us is, there's kind of an aha moment. And I think we have those. I experienced a couple yesterday in some meetings that I was in where it was like, yeah, that matches with what I think my call is. But it's being open to the fact that God is always there. He's never leaving us. Just as the sun is there for the sunflowers, there's things that we don't have control over the sun. We do have control over maybe how we fertilize, how we, nourish the plants. But I think it's those sacred moments where we become to understand a bit more about our own identity in a deeper way, and also our aspirational identity. And when that intersects with what we think is our baptismal call, there's kind of an aha and a real synchronicity.
Wow. I love the different images we've had, of aha moments or, I think of the glimpses, and it's enough. It's enough to propel us forward. Norm, how about you? What was your response to this?
Well, the idea of the sunflower, there's a couple images that kind of, one is how subtle it is. Like it moves and it's very subtle. And it's just kind of like the idea of the days getting longer. Like it's, Christmas being on the shortest day of the year. And from that point on, getting longer and longer. But we don't notice it getting longer. It's only when we reflect back on it and start discerning. And so the subtlety in it, uh, and I guess, and then the other thing is that they grow. Uh, I remember driving through Italy and seeing sunflower fields, and they all grow at the same pace. And so as one grows, because they're all reaching for the sun, so they all have to grow together. And I just think of our Catholic community in our Catholic schools, that as we start to work and help different students grow, we're all growing, and we grow and they grow. And so it's that whole sense of community sharing. Um, but that whole subtlety, and I think that's really important as Catholic educators, that we look at that subtlety. Is part of it is to create those haha moments, to recognize it. So I know in administration, so when our kids come to us, their growth is going to be subtle. That's why we're gifted to have them for 13, 12, 13, 14 years. Is it's a year. So if we can, I know when students come into my office and maybe you've suspended them or whatever, but to be able to identify, you know what, today you were really good. You didn't swear at that person, or you didn't take the, and you start to identify their growth. And I think it's really incumbent on us, the subtle growth. We can't expect them to kind of change. Okay, come in. Okay, that was wrong. Now you're going to be good. Um, but rather it's a general growth, and I think the real growth happens and the faith happens is that we say we're going to stick with you always. Right now in today's world, relationships are very transactional. Where when we come to faith, when we come to Christ, he's not transactional. He's just fully in love with us. And I think that as Catholic educators, that's what we need to do for our kids. That they need to know, hey, you may make mistakes, and we're going to have what we call progressive discipline, but really it's formation. We're going to help with form because we expect the best of you, because you deserve the best. And so, how can we help you to be that? And I think it's through the subtlety, staying with them in community, and I think as we walk with them, that the whole community grows, just like the whole field of sunflowers grow. that we all get closer to Christ. So that's why I think it's a beautiful gift. Catholic education and being a sense of being a part of the community, the ecclesial community, what a gift that is. And that's where our baptism is, right? Our baptism is what forms us as ecclesial community. So it's just such a blessing. So it's such a rich symbol for us. Thank you.
Oh, I think it's a beautiful image, and you're putting both you, Lorrie and Norm, you've put such flesh on what conversion really looks like in the life of our Catholic education system. It's, in those meetings, it's not, again, it's dramatic in the sense that if you really think about it, the action of God is powerful. Subtle is still dramatic, it's powerful. But the fact is that we do often have to stand back a little bit and say, oh, that was you,
Yeah.
you know?
And you know what? That's why I love graduations, and they're so important for us, and they're so different for me in terms of Catholic education, because we look at it, it's not just a matter of the person achieving a degree, it's a matter of, but we've been able, like the road to Emmaus, we've walked with these students for 12 years, and for in high school, we walked with them for 4 or 5 years. And the student in grade 9 that we've worked with, and you stop from fighting in the hallways and pushing each other, to the graduates standing up there with the cap and being proud, and their parents being proud. And like, when you reflect back, what a honor and a privilege it is to walk with them for those years and to see the growth, and you start to realize it's so much bigger than us. It's so much that it has to be the Spirit, it has to be God working. So it's what a gift when we, but I think it's incumbent on us to articulate that for them, because we live in a world where the people don't articulate that anymore. So I think it's more important for us now than ever to be able to articulate it like we're doing today. This is connected to baptism. This is connected to growth. This is connected to, this is what conversion is. And conversion's really just growth.
Yeah. And I think
it's
our
not linear.
role, no, certainly not linear. In fact, very cyclical or spiral.
Yeah.
Very much so. And the themes there are themes in all of our lives that come back and back. It's like, I need to learn some lessons again and again and again.
Yes.
I think I've learned them, and then no, maybe not, but just so important. And I love the way you're framing that mutual evangelization that happens in Catholic education. It's not me bringing Jesus to them. There's nowhere I can go that Jesus is not already present. The most desperate situation, he's there. The most wonderful situation, he's there. The most painful reality, he's already there. And what we do is try to uncover that he's anonymous in the situation. So like you said, to make connections, to I think sometimes help people to connect that the story they're living or that I'm living, is the story of Jesus Christ alive today, and it really, what a powerful privilege, is ours. Norm, you just told me something that I want to just talk a little bit about, and these gradual movements. I think in our lives, conversion looks like a gradual journey from darkness to light. That child who shows up in your office, Norm, and you've got to practice some form of discipline, whatever progressive discipline, whatever that's going to be. That can be, and almost always is, a journey from darkness to light, to realizing I'm not punishing you because I want to do this. I'm punishing you because we're going to grow together. And that we're going from, so journeys of conversion, we can put all kinds of froms and tos. I just think of a few of them, darkness to light, fear to trust, despair to hope, sorrow to joy. We see this every single day in our classrooms, in our hallways, in our offices, all the time. It happens from sorrow to joy, from war to peace. Now, sometimes it's not as dramatic as war, but from enmity to friends, indifference to love, falsehood to truth, death to life. We see this and live it all the time. Norm, you talked about a graduation. I want to tell you a story. Again, it's a story where I was certainly converted. as a very young teacher. I'm going to tell you a story about my third day of teaching. And I thought I had it all together. I thought I was a pretty good teacher and I was going to save the world, or at least the little town where I was teaching. And so about the third day, I was at my desk doing my lesson plans for the next day. It was a small rural school right on the ocean. My classroom looked right out over this beautiful bay. And I was looking out the window and doing my lessons, and I saw a car pull in, and a woman just abandoned the car. She got to the school door. She pulled the school door open, and she started yelling as soon as she got to the door. "Where is she? I need to talk to her." And I knew deep down in my stomach that it was me. I was the her. And what was the issue? I had no idea. And these footsteps came down the hallway, and she found my classroom door, and she stood there. And she said, "You're the one. You are ruining my life." And I thought, well, that's pretty serious. Come in. And she came in, and I was really scared. I wondered whether she was unhinged in some way, what had really happened. And she explained that I taught 4 of her sons. And I had sent home an assignment. I taught music. And I had sent home an assignment asking the children to ask an adult who they knew, didn't have to be a parent, but somebody, about a song that they loved. And they had to write a few lines about the song, the story of the song that they got from this adult. She was not happy. That was too much homework. And I didn't think that was much at all. But obviously, there was something that I didn't know about this. So even though I was very young and very inexperienced, I knew to keep talking to her. And eventually, what came out was not that it was too much homework. The problem was that she could not read or write. And so she couldn't help her 4 boys. And that was breaking her heart. And it broke my heart too. I knew in that moment, I knew that I wasn't there to teach music. I was there to teach children and to teach a family in this case. And something else was being called for from me that I had no idea was even possible. So I said, well, with all the goodness and altruism of a young teacher's heart, if if you can't read or write, we can fix that. I can teach you to read and write. And it took all the air out of her sails. This woman who was so fueled by anger, and me who was responding in fear, she just stopped and said, "You could do that?" I said, "Of course. I can teach you to read and write if you want." And she said, "I want. I do want." And I said, "Okay, we'll get started. What's a good night for you? What's a good day for you? What's a good time?" And she said, "Well, what about Thursday night?" I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you want to come to my house or will we do it here in the school?" And she said, "I'd rather come to the school. That would be a better place." And I could see that. I hadn't thought about the implications of going to her house and what that might be like. So we agreed. And then as she was leaving with a bit of a lighter step than she had come in with, I said, "You know, if you have anybody else who you know of who can't read or write, invite them to come." Well, now, Thursday night came and there were 22 in my classroom. 22 people. I was overwhelmed. I can't tell you I knew what to do with them, but we got ourselves registered, got basic information, and then I went to the Department of Education and got information about adult basic education and how you structure that. And for the next 4 years, I watched the most amazing transformation in that group of, it ended up being 27 adults, but I watched the most amazing transformation in them, not just in their learning, but in their self-confidence and their sense of themselves and their relationships with their children, their relationship with me. And there was a transformation in me. They changed me. It was a real journey of conversion for me that through that experience, even more so than teaching their children, I learned what it meant to be part of a community and how to teach people and not subjects. And the proudest night of that lady's life, I think, was the night she walked up through our school gym for her high school graduation. She got her equivalency. And she was so proud. And her partner went to the nearest flower shop, which was about an hour's drive on a dirt road, and got her a corsage. I would be willing to bet that she never had a corsage in her life. But to be some small part of that corsage to this day is one of the most transformative events of my life. So that from darkness to light and from fear to trust really speaks to me. But now I would add a phrase to this, and it's from whatever to whatever for something. Conversion is for good. So it's for more life, for greater participation in the community, for love. But it's from and to. But maybe the most important step is not on this screen. It's for that full participation. I think about John 10:10. I came that you may have life and have it to the full. So what about you, Lorrie and Norm, and those of you who are listening on the webinar? What's been striking you in this bit of an exploration around what conversion looks like in Catholic schools, in Catholic communities, in our communities of faith, wherever they are, in our human communities, wherever they are?
I think I love what you just said about for something. Because I think of an example, was at Norm's school, actually. They had a project, tiny homes project, where the students were working on building homes that were going to be taken up to one of the reserves as shelter. And I remember coming to see one of the finished products and talking to a student who, she got into the construction program and wanted to try this out. I think was trying to find her way and, what was going to be her gift and charism and what she would bring to, as her passion or her call. And she was just beaming, talking about, I learned how to put the floors in and I learned the electrical pieces, and we've built this home, and as part of the celebration, of course, they had members from the reserve who would be receiving the home come and see what was happening and see the kids who had contributed to this. And I was looking at this student who was so passionate about what she did and proud about the work that they had done, and was finding her calling. This is what I want to go into, after my high school years. But at the same time, seeing it for a bigger purpose, seeing that, it wasn't just me going and learning and getting a mark in this class. It was what I've contributed to the greater good, the common good. And I think that's what we are all about in our Catholic schools. We're hoping that our students become contributing citizens in the world. And when they can find a passion that they have that intersects with God's call for them and see a bigger purpose, that's what we're all about, I think.
I think there's a famous writer who says that your vocation is where your passion meets the world's hunger.
Mm.
And I think that there's such truth to that. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lorrie. I'm that list you had up there, and about the from darkness to light, or desperate, sorrow, and as you were speaking about that, and that mother who came to you, I was just listening. That's all about fear, like the fear, darkness, and it's imprisoning. And I just had the image of the upper room, of the disciples in the upper room, and they were there, and it paralyzes you. Like it paralyzes, and we strike out in anger. We strike out like it's hard it's hard to see the sun. It's hard to see the love with that. And I just wonder how many of our kids are coming to school with in darkness and fear and all and desperate. And so we talk about safe spaces, but I think in Catholic education, safe spaces means something very different. Like it's a real like and I'm taking this course about the brain, and actually when kids are in fear, darkness, and like all of that stuff that goes on, they can't access all parts of the brain, the neocortex. So it's paralyzing. And so we need to look at how can we create that environment where they can be free and be accepted. I know in the office we often like when a kid's in trouble, they've been in a fight or whatever, they come in the office, and I've talked to my VPs, and so we're very clear. We actually don't deal with the issue right away because they're not in a position to be able to deal with it. Like it's still a very much a fight, like a fight or flight sort of a feeling. So we'll get them in there and say, and I've always, listen, I'm gonna have a tea. Do you want a tea? Do you want water? So here, I got some pot. Do you want some here? You get just a minute, I'll just be a minute. And they're sitting there and they're kind of all uptight. So I like to have a tea, so you give them a minute or two, and then it's kind of, hey, you're a hockey player. What's going on with hockey? We talk about a number of other things. And at the end said, okay, well, geez, we better deal with why are you here again? And then they tell you why they're there. And then but there's kind of a safe environment where they've been seen as a person, not as an incident. And I think we really need to create that environment, because that's where I think conversion happens. Because then almost always they'll go, oh, sir, I swore at a teacher, and I know I shouldn't have. Oh, I know. Well, what are we going to do about that? I can't have you swear at a teacher. So what are we going to do? If I go apologize, yeah, I said, do you think we need more? Well, how about just attention? I said, yeah, I gotta let your parents know, okay, but it's a very different sort of conversation that they're a part of. And hopefully there's growth in that. And it's a growth rather than it's being a constant battle. And I think Catholic education, we need to be a place where we all make mistakes. I make mistakes. And then I always tell them, listen, if you don't count my mistakes, I won't count yours. Let's move ahead. And we just move ahead. So I think that I think that's where Catholic schools, probably we need them more now than ever in history, because society is not a place where kids feel safe or valued for who they are. They feel valued as a part of the economy. They feel valued for being a part of a workforce. They feel valued for being able to buy certain things or wear certain clothes or reach certain, being measured on these, rather than just being themselves. And I think we're in Catholic education, when we create the space, okay, what's going on with you? Let's see, because we just love you for who you are. I don't care if you get 90, I don't care if you get 40. You're beautiful. And we need you to share your beauty with us. So
I always let there's a line from St. Alphonsus. I've got all the St. Alphonsus quotes, obviously, but he had this. I think of him often as a very strict man, but he had a line about God's love for us, and he says God is crazy in love with you. Pazzo per amore. God is crazy in love with you. And what would you do with, and that, what you're describing, Norm, is what you do with someone you're crazy in love with. You look for every chance to celebrate the good. You overlook a lot. You kind of get a sense of what do I let go? Give people lots of time. You wait for them, and waiting is a very active thing. So what you describe is love in action, right? And crazy love to the nth degree. We love when in the Catholic school system and in the Catholic school way of being or ethos, we love, and that's what we're about.
And I think yeah, thank you. You're right. And I also think we need to apply this to our staffs, because they're struggling. They feel assaulted. They feel under. So how do we kind of help them to really feel that you're loved? And I'm always amazed with that whole image of love like that. And that's sort of back to the sunflower, that it keeps growing as everyone grows. It grows. The teenager who falls in love with the girl for the first time, or the boy, that's true love. We call it puppy love, but that's true love. But then I keep telling them, But you know what? There's a new horizon, as Bernard Lonergan says it, there's a new horizon that when you actually fall in love with the person you want to spend the rest of your life with, and you stand on your wedding day, that's true love. Like that love's even greater. And on that day, you're gonna think, I don't know that I could be even more in love. And then you hold a baby for the first time that's yours. And that love is even far more. I said, and then wait till you hold a grandchild. Like and so love just keeps growing. And so it's a wedding feast of Cana. The best is yet to come. You know, and so I think when we can be messengers of this, the best is yet to come. And for these kids saying, value what your experience is true, but it's only the start. What a gift you are. Like so enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. It's I think that's a important message for and our teachers. Like I have a number of teachers who just had their first child. They're they got bags in their eyes, they're exhausted, but you can't take a smile off his face. You can't take a smile off his face. And he kind of with pride wears, and I think he does it on purpose, stains on his shirt from a baby, and I think he's kind of doing it on purpose. But they're so excited. He said, I didn't know I could love this much.
Yeah.
So
my niece is going to be married in the summer, and the joy, and it kind of sucks everybody in,
Yeah.
like everybody's involved in planning this wedding. I mean, there are so many jobs, but everybody's volunteering to do this, and we're this huge family, but there's space for everybody and more. So love does that. Hey, it expands our hearts. It's the Grinch.
I told him, I said, now I want you to reflect on and talk at the next staff meeting. How is this being in love with your baby going to make you a better teacher?
Yeah.
And he says, I'm looking at the kids in my class. He said, every one of them is someone's child. And he said, and I always knew that intellectually. He said, now I know it in my heart. And so every experience, and when we lose a parent, like we become more compassionate. When we struggle in our own family life, we become more compassionate and more able to relate. And so it's organic. It keeps growing, and we keep growing.
And it's a journey of conversion, right? And
Yeah.
I think your point about Lonergan, Lonergan had that whole theory of insight, that
Yeah.
at some point, what changes everything is if we can pause and like give whatever the experience is the time it takes, like the seed to germinate, and then the moment of insight comes. So it's a real journey of conversion. And the way you're describing it is how it happens. It's not in these lightning bolt moments, although having a baby must be a lightning bolt moment,
Yeah.
and being married must be a lightning bolt moment. But it's just that it happens almost under our noses. If we don't take the time, we might never notice how we're being changed
Yeah.
and how we're changing those around us. And that's we put all kinds of words on it, but that's conversion.
Mhm.
Turning more and more toward the sun and becoming more and more like, hopefully, more and more like the sun as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for this conversation. This has been absolutely delightful. And I'm going to ask us and everybody who's there just to take a moment. And as you look back on the last, hard to believe it's nearly 50 minutes, but um, just before you go away, what resonates with you? What are you going to take with you from this conversation? What challenges you? And perhaps what gives you hope as you're moving away from this conversation? And I see our lovely Anne has popped back onto the screen.
There was a beautiful affirmation of teaching as a vocation that came through so clearly, both in what you shared and what Norm and Lorrie reflected back with you. I loved that there was an affirmation of the importance of chaplaincy, and we're so blessed. It's one of the great blessings of Catholic education that we have chaplaincy leaders in our schools and our systems. I think there's an incredible beauty that we see coming through your stories in terms of the power of teaching, the power of being with and knowing how to be with. There's something really powerful and important that we had two such beautiful leaders in Catholic education today who are willing to be open and vulnerable and sharing their faith. This is really a great blessing to the whole of the community when we can gather as adults and share our faith insights and see how they impact our work in classrooms, in hallways, in meeting spaces, as large decisions are made, as everyday small decisions are made. Just quoting from the document that came from the On the Way Symposium, in Catholic education, the formation of all members is essential for the strength and health of the body. It is fundamental to the mission of Catholic education. And so, Anne, the one thing that I hope that people hang on to is you told us conversion is about from to, but that we're going to really think about that for. What is our for? And Lorrie, I don't know if you had a final thought there, or Norm, you had a final thought you wanted to share.
Sorry about that. I always like to end with hope, I think. And I think there's a yearning out there when I've been digging into research about our youth and what they're saying about religion and spirituality. And there's such a strong yearning for our youth in their spirituality, and it comes through their wanting to be connectedness. And I think that's such a powerful message for us. We have great youth who are critical thinkers and want to do good in the world. And I think we harness that and give them that sense of belonging. And it's in those little moments that they'll continually turn to God, and like the sunflower, continually turn to the sun. So I think it's very hopeful times.
Yeah, and just like Lorrie was saying, that whole thing, I'd like to take away fear. Like that whole bit, that upper room is a powerful image for us for education now. And when Jesus appeared, he didn't say, "I forgive you." He didn't say any of that. Even after all the things that they had done, his first words were, "Peace be with you." And I think that's a message that we could give to, it would do well for all of us to say, "Peace be with you." You know, God is with you. You're loved beyond imagine. And what an honor it is to be in Catholic education and to be able to walk with young people and walk with young teachers and walk with their parents and families. It's what a gift. So thank you.
Thank you very much for those final thoughts. As Anne Walsh has said, I've heard her say many times before, you never see one sunflower growing on its own. They're always growing in a field. Please join us next Thursday when we will have the second part of our two-part webinar series that will focus on bringing adult faith formation in Catholic education to life. Thank you so much for your participation today, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.